Not every mystery begins with a lie. Sometimes what seems suspicious only hides a sacrifice so noble that it goes unnoticed by the hurried eye. That's why this story will keep you hooked from start to finish, because it talks about things that many people ignore. The value of a silent love, the strength of an invisible woman, and the transformation that begins when we learn to see beyond appearances. Helena had everything money could buy: a magazine cover house, an enviable career, and an adorable son. But she didn't have time, and it was precisely when she began to notice the nanny's affection for her son that something began to bother her. Why so much attachment? Why such a rush at 5 in the afternoon? What was Nina, the dedicated nanny, hiding so much? Driven by doubt and by a pain she couldn't explain, Helena followed Nina after work. And what she discovered there in the public hospital, next to a fragile woman, not only changed the way she saw that woman, but it changed her own life. Because some moving stories aren't made of big twists and turns, but of small gestures that transform, and this one will touch you. Nina wasn't one of those people who made a fuss. She arrived early, left on time, and during the day she seemed to move the world with small gestures. Her simple, well-ironed uniform matched her discreet yet presence-filled manner. There was patience in her eyes, there was genuine care in her touch. For Gabriel, she wasn't just an employee. She was comfort, a safe routine, a shoulder to cry on. While Helena was divided between meetings and social events, Nina was the constant in that busy home. She fed the boy calmly, combed his hair with affection, and made up stories during bath time that only the two of them knew. It was a silent love, the kind that asks for nothing in return, an invisible but firm bond, like the roots of a tree that no one sees growing, only noticed when it already provides shade. Helena, even surrounded by comfort and status, felt something strange when she saw her son run to the nanny's lap. Was it gratitude? Was it jealousy? Or just the awareness of an absent motherhood that was beginning to weigh on her? Whatever it was, she knew one thing: Nina was more than she seemed. And perhaps behind that calm smile, there was a story that had yet to be told. Every day at 5 p.m. sharp, Nina would end her shift with a polite smile and disappear. She would decline her boss's rides with a "thanks, but I'd rather go by bike." Always the same answer, always the same soft tone. She would get on her bike with the basket on the front, adjust her backpack on her back, and pedal away in a hurry. It was as if she were running away. But from what? Helena began to notice. While other employees were open about their hobbies or families, Nina was a calm wall. She never said where she came from or where she was going. She was nice, yes, but there was something too reserved about her. The millionaire, accustomed to transparency in contracts and negotiations, didn't know how to deal with that silence. And the more I observed, the more I felt the itch behind my ear grow. Over time, the situation went from curiosity to discomfort. That dedicated nanny, who seemed tailor-made for the family, carried a mystery. And in Helena's heart, the discomfort was not only due to doubt, but also due to the feeling that she was losing her place as a mother to someone she barely knew. And that was when the desire to find out became a necessity. No matter how rational she was, Helena could no longer ignore her discomfort. The relationship between Gabriel and Nina was so natural, so full of affection, that it hurt. It was as if the nanny was occupying, without asking permission, a space that was previously hers. And no matter how much she tried to justify it with the argument of work, something inside her screamed, "You are losing your son." It was on a random night, one of those nights when the silence in the house is louder than any music, that Helena made the decision. I'm going to follow her. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't tell her friends. She just got in the car the next day and waited across the street from afar, watching the old bicycle turn the corner as it always did. For the first time, she was about to invade Nina's world and maybe discover what she wasn't ready to see. As he drove slowly behind the nanny, his heart sank. What if she was right? What if there was something dark behind that image of a perfect woman? But there was also another possibility, and this one was terrifying. What if there was just a gesture of gratitude hidden behind that mystery, a silent sacrifice that she herself would never have the courage to make? The street was simple, the building was worn down, and the facade of the public hospital revealed a scene far removed from Helena's luxurious world. She parked the car with sweaty hands and a racing heart. When she saw Nina walk through the front door, alone, without looking to either side, she knew she was about to discover something that would change everything. And it was no surprise. From the cold, fluorescent-lit hallway, Helena discreetly peeked through a half-open door. There, before her eyes, the devoted Nanny, always so serene, knelt beside an elderly lady. Dalva, her mother, had a pale face and thinning hair. Nina blew on the soup before offering it delicately, wiped her mother's lips with a damp cloth, and hummed softly. It was pure care for her mother, a silent but gigantic love. Helena felt a lump in her throat. That invisible woman who cared for her son so zealously every day spent her nights caring for her own mother, without asking for anything, without complaining. What she saw there was not a dirty secret or a lie, but a scene of silent sacrifice, of feminine strength, of a love that transforms even tiredness. And at that moment, for the first time, Helena felt small in the face of Nina's greatness. On the way home, Helena drove in silence. The radio was off, her thoughts were racing. That scene in the hospital wouldn't leave her mind. Nina, exhausted but determined, dedicating her time, and the most precious thing she had, to taking care of her sick mother. Meanwhile, she, who could afford nannies, nurses, therapists, and chefs, barely knew what her own son's routine was like. The next morning, something changed. For the first time in a long time, Helena woke up before her alarm clock. She made a simple coffee, laid out Gabriel's clothes, and instead of rushing to her cell phone, she sat down at the table. When her son appeared, his eyes still puffy from sleep, she greeted him with a kiss on the forehead and a plate of star-shaped pancakes. He smiled in surprise. It was a new, unexpected gesture, but sincere. Absent motherhood began to give way to something closer, more present. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Helena began to make a point of picking up Gabriel from school every now and then, reading him a bedtime story and asking him about his day without rushing. The reunion with her son didn't come with speeches or promises. It came with silence, with presence, with a genuine desire to be a mother and not just a provider. Helena knew that Nina would never ask for help. That dedicated nanny was the kind of person who faced everything with dignity and silence. So instead of revealing what she had seen at the public hospital, she chose another path, that of subtle gestures. He started by leaving an extra plate on the lunch table. One day she made a cake and, accidentally, left over a slice packed to go. One afternoon, when she saw that Nina's old bike had a bent tire, Helena called the doorman and asked him to fix it, but without saying who had sent it. It was her way of saying thank you, of acknowledging that silent sacrifice that sustained two lives. A gesture of gratitude doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes all it takes is a look, a pause, an unexpected kindness that says, "I see you." Nina found it strange, but didn't question it. She accepted the small improvements with a shy smile, like someone who wasn't used to being cared for. And Helena, for the first time, felt pleasure in giving without expecting anything in return. It was as if that care for the invisible woman was slowly curing her own coldness. Empathy and generosity, which had previously seemed distant, now guided her daily actions. Before, Helena's schedule was non-negotiable. Calls, business lunches, charity events that seemed more like status parades. But something inside her had turned the key. Now, she looked at Gabriel as if trying to make up for lost time. Crooked drawings on the refrigerator began to be worth more than contracts in the leather briefcase. Presence became a priority. On Saturday mornings, instead of going to the gym, she would take her son to the playground in the neighborhood square. She discovered the pleasure of eating ice cream with a cone, running on the grass, and hearing spontaneous laughter without having to check her cell phone. These were simple moments, but they carried true inner wealth, the kind that no investment fund can offer. In the silence of the balcony, Helena thought, how many years had she spent seeking everything that money could buy, and missing out on what really mattered? Motherhood, previously outsourced, was now lived authentically. The change in her life did not come with a scandal, but with small adjustments. And this, oddly enough, made her feel richer than ever. Helena knew that words would not be enough. Nina was one of those who would not accept charity, forced help, or public praise. So she decided to act in the same tone of love that the nanny offered, discreetly. She called her lawyer and described the ideal little house, small, cozy, with a yard and close to the hospital. She registered everything in Dalva's name, without a visible signature, without ceremony. When she handed over the envelope with the keys, she made up some excuse. A donation from the company for special cases, she said with a restrained smile. Nina was speechless. Her eyes filled with tears, her voice choked. She tried to refuse, but Helena was firm. It's the least you can do compared to everything you do. A gesture like that didn't need the spotlight. It was a wordless recognition. The little house became more than a home. It was a symbol of dignity, justice, and care for a mother made with the heart. Outside, the old bicycle was still there, as a reminder of the path traveled, but now there were flowers in the window, the smell of cake coming from the kitchen, and above all, the certainty that silent love, when recognized, has the power to change destinies. Seeing Nina caring for her mother with such humility and dignity awakened something deep within Helena. She realized that while her world revolved around profits and status, there were thousands of women like Nina supporting families with affection and being ignored by society. That was when the idea was born, to create something bigger than an individual gift, an inspiring social project. At the meeting with the partners, Helena didn't bring graphs or growth forecasts. She brought a story. She spoke of invisible women, of silent sacrifices, of everyday heroes who don't wear capes, but aprons. She presented the Nina Project as a way to empower, support and value caregivers who live on the margins but sustain homes with true love. And there, in that cold decision room, empathy blossomed. The project was approved. Free psychological consultations, training, legal assistance, and an emergency support fund were included. It wasn't charity, it was recognition. Helena knew she couldn't change the whole world, but she could start by doing her part. And by naming the project with that simple name, she immortalized a gesture of gratitude with the potential to change lives. Time passed with the ease of those who live for what really matters. Dalva, even though fragile, was able to spend her last days at home, in a bright room, with the smell of lavender and the sound of classical music coming from Nina's portable radio. When she left, it was with her daughter holding her hand, without machines, without rushing, without loneliness. It was a farewell full of love that, ironically, seemed more like a reunion with peace. The wake was simple, but full of people touched by that invisible woman who had given so much without fanfare. And there were Helena and Gabriel, not as bosses, but as part of the family. Gabriel brought yellow flowers and said quietly, "She became a star, didn't she, Mum?" Helena replied with an emotional smile, "One of the brightest, my love." It was a simple moment, but full of personal transformation. Back to her routine, Helena didn't go back to being who she used to be. Her commitments continued, but with a different weight. She began to pay more attention to the details, to value the feminine strength around her, and to recognize that at the end of the day, true wealth is not in the numbers in a bank account, but in the stories that touch us, and in the love that transforms us even in silence. Touching stories don't need big twists to make an impression on us. Sometimes all they do is remind us of something we've forgotten, that true care doesn't shout, it whispers, that the deepest love rarely asks for applause, and that it's the small gestures, the ones made when no one is looking, that define who we truly are. Nina never asked for anything. She never demanded recognition, but it was precisely her humble attitude, her silent sacrifice, and her daily dedication that touched the heart of a millionaire accustomed to the noise of the world. The dedicated Nanny taught, without knowing it, that silent love is one of the most powerful ways to transform a life, or several. And you? How many Ninas have passed through your life without being seen? How many times has the brilliance of an everyday hero gone unnoticed while you were distracted by rushing goals or worries? Maybe today is the ideal time to pause, take a deep breath, and start seeing with more empathy, more truth, and more presence. This story is a powerful reminder. Love doesn't always reveal itself in beautiful words or expensive gifts. Sometimes it's in the silence, in the routine, in the daily dedication that no one sees, but that transforms everything. And maybe what you need most right now isn't something new, but a new perspective on what's already around you. Think about it. Who are the people who support you behind the scenes? Who takes care of you without charging, without demanding recognition? Have you ever thanked them? Have you seen the greatness of these simple gestures? If this story touched you, like this video, share with someone special and subscribe to the channel. Here, each story is made to warm the heart and remind us that it is still worth believing in good. And tell me here in the comments, do you know someone like Nina? Or have you ever experienced something that turned you into silence?